Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Dance Gavin Dance and the recent rape allegations against their clean singer, Tilian Pearson. Now, if you've been following Dance Gavin Dance recently, you'll know that these guys just can't catch a break. A few months ago, Tim Furyk, their bassist, died of a suspected fentanyl overdose, and now Tilian has two rape allegations against him. And I'm honestly not even sure if allegations is the right word in this case because Tilian has acknowledged that he did have sex with these two women, but he's saying that it was consensual. So yeah, he isn't denying that it happened. So it's not really like an allegation that something happened. Like everybody has acknowledged these things did happen. He's just saying that it was consensual or that he thought that it was consensual. So Tilian is stepping away from Dance Gavin Dance to seek professional help, and there's a lot of questions regarding the band's future. In this video, though, I'm going to go through the allegations and look at where the band can go from here. If you watched the video that I did about Every Time I Die, it's going to be kind of like that. We're going to do a pretty deep dive into the women's allegations and then the band's response and all that kind of stuff. Have a couple other pretty interesting things that I uncovered along the way as well. So the first woman is named Michaela, and originally she posted her story anonymously on Reddit. Later, she identified herself and received a lot of backlash because she apparently has a history of causing drama in the scene and isn't really seen as being a super reliable person. On top of that, her story is extremely long. It has quite a few contradicting statements, and it doesn't provide any actual proof. There's no texts, screenshots, photos, or anything else like that. It's just a really long Reddit post. That being said, I'll highlight a couple of the biggest allegations that she makes. She says that Tilian slapped her super hard during sex, even when she told him not to, and that he was crazy, possessive, and controlling. She says that he was incredibly insecure and would lash out over the smallest things, and then he would be really nice to her as soon as she started crying, would like love bomb her and be like, oh, you're the most important person to me, even though they had only met this one weekend in Sacramento at Swan Fest, which is a big Dance Gavin Dance show. The worst allegation, though, for sure, that she says is that after they had hung out once or twice, she the next day went to his hotel to get sushi. He tried to initiate sex. She said no, and then he initiated again, having sex with her against her will. So, a few things that I want to mention here. And by the way, I'm not scrolling through all of this so you can see it because, like I said, it's insanely long, but I'll put all the links below so that you can read it if you want to. I'm really trying my best to summarize it here, though, because there's so much information in this post. A few things that I do want to mention, though. She says Tilian was pretty drunk the whole weekend of Swanfest when they hung out, and he was clearly grieving over Tim's death and was not emotionally stable at all. Some fans have commented that it seems like Michaela was also kind of taking advantage of Tilian in a way because he was so drunk, he was so unstable, yet she continued to meet up with him and have sex with him, when he was in this vulnerable state. She also acknowledges that they had a lot of good times that weekend, which is why she continued seeing him. And I just want to point that out because they spent a lot of time together over these, 4 or 5 days, and it wasn't all bad. There's some nuance here, and I think that definitely affected her decisions. It wasn't as clear cut as this is a terrible situation. You raped me. I hate you. I never want to see you again. They definitely had some good times. And, even if 99% of the times are good, though, and that 1% was, well, I didn't want to have sex with you and you kind of made me have sex with you against my will, then, that's still a serious situation. So definitely some nuance here for her because, this spanned multiple days and it was kind of like some back and forth. But the thing I think that confused fans the most was that after the sushi date, where she went to his apartment, he sort of raped her. according to her account. And then they still went and got sushi. And then after the sushi date, Michaela and Tilian went back to his hotel. She made an excuse to leave and then says that she ran out of the hotel as fast as she could. But then the very next morning, she called Tilian and asked if he wanted to hang out again. And what's even more sort of perplexing is that she also flew out to see him on tour a couple weeks later and hang out again. So this is what I'm talking about, where, she definitely did want to keep seeing him, but that doesn't really excuse these inexcusable behaviors. So next, Tilian responded to this allegation, much shorter post here, and he linked screenshots of the texts between him and Michaela from that weekend. I read all of the text. I'm going to show a couple here. I really only saw one message, though, from Michaela where she said that she was unhappy, but it's not related to anything about the allegations. It's kind of a different issue from that. If anything, reading through these texts, Tilian seems kind of like the disinterested one, and Michaela kind of seems like clingy and smitten. That being said, though, it does seem a little weird that none of the texts mention anything that she described in her Reddit post. We'll go ahead and look at a couple of them here. So part of the reason I'm showing these first ones is so that you can see Tilian talking about getting too tipsy. He talks about being kind of sad. Also says that he's crying. So he obviously coping with alcohol, super upset about Tim dying, really emotional weekend at Swanfest. So he's definitely not in a good place at this time. This is the message from Michaela that I was talking about, where she says, I want to be extremely honest and say that I'm not sure if I want to keep seeing you or not. I feel like it's been a little intense for me lately, especially tonight. You hurt my feelings a few times, and I don't know. I think you're absolutely amazing, but also feel like you're romanticizing me a little bit too much, and it worries me. I want to be here with you and help you and give you all my love, but things can be a little overwhelming for me at times. Down here, she says, I really like you. I care about you. Okay. So, she says things were pretty intense. Doesn't really say, you raped me or anything like that. But reassures him that he hasn't been a burden. She's loved spending time with him, loved making him feel better and snuggling and kissing him, and so on. I want to do everything with you. Okay. This is Tilian's response. Broken heart emoji. So he is pretty sad about it. Basically says, I'm sorry you're feeling this way. Let's just not make this the end and everything will be okay. And then she says, I don't want it to be the end. I want to see you again. Which lines up with the fact that she later flew out to see him on tour. And then this is the text that Tilian sent to her. I should have said ahead of time. This is from Tilian's point of view, so he is the blue and she's the gray. So after she flew out to see him on tour, they hung out for a night, and then in the morning, Tilian texted her saying, you've been nothing but kind and sweet to me, but after sleeping on it, I don't think we should continue down the path we're heading. Sorry if I gave you mixed signals, especially when I was overly affectionate and drunk in Sacramento. So he even seems to acknowledge right here that he was sort of putting her on this pedestal, being super affectionate to her, that he was really drunk in Sacramento. I think later on at some point he says that after Swanfest he sobered up to like appropriately grieve, where he's not under the influence. And so it looks like he may have taken some time and reflected on things and decided that they, basically just says, I don't want to develop this any further. She says, kind of thought that was going to happen today. And then down here she says, this is like 16 days later. She says, I'll be in LA next week. Can I see you? It'd be nice to see you again without everything being super stressful. So even after Swanfest, after he broke things off, when she visited him on tour, she reached out to him to see if they could hang out in LA a couple weeks after that. So I just mentioned these things because in this situation, I think it is really nuanced, and you know some bad stuff happened, but clearly she cared about him, and I think that's why there's this interesting back and forth, and it's not like the stereotypical, I'm bringing these allegations against you and I want to ruin your life type of thing. Um, the other thing that I wanted to mention is here we have um, her call log. And so it's obviously, look at this. I mean, they were calling each other a lot. In her post, she talks about him blowing up her phone one night, calling her a bunch of different times. And this actually seems to corroborate that and make sense because, even though the texts don't say certain things, maybe they talked on the phone about how uncomfortable she was about certain stuff. Maybe they had those conversations in person. I'm not sure, but I do just want to point out that the text conversations are clearly not all that there is to this story. Moving forward, though, we're going to talk about the second woman's allegations. And I apologize, I don't think I caught her name. It's just mostly her Reddit account, Spooky Pookie 8. So, this one's a bit shorter. I'm still going to summarize it, but this is the main part that I'm going to be going off of for your awareness. So, this woman matched with Tilian on Hinge. And I'll just say right here that there seems to be a theme of Tilian sleeping with his fans, which introduces kind of like a whole new set of problems to the equation because, you know, these people look up to you, they're fans of you and your band and your music and that kind of stuff. And so that kind of puts you in a position of power that you have to be really careful that you don't abuse or like take advantage of. Um so anyway, this woman matched with Tilian on Hinge and they went on a date in LA, and then they went back to his apartment after, and she told him that she doesn't have sex on the first date but that she's okay doing other stuff. So I'm just going to read this part of the Reddit post because it sums it up pretty succinctly. So they went back to his apartment, and she told him when they got there that she doesn't have sex on the first date. And she says his sweet and shy personality flipped, started making fun of her for that rule, and kept negging her, which is like a dating term of basically it just means making fun of her. So he's making fun of her, then being really nice, then making fun of me again. Still did other stuff, that's cool, but I tell him again, no sex. And there was a moment during other stuff where he was staring at the ceiling, looking really angry, and she asked if he wasn't into it and if he wanted her to leave. He said, "What are you, insecure?" And then she said, "What? No." And then at that moment, he tries to have sex with her without a condom. And she's like, "No, I don't want to have sex, just like I said." And she keeps pushing him away. He keeps trying. She keeps trying to push him away. He then says this quote, which she says is burned into her brain. And the quote is, "What's the difference? I've already been in your mouth." Then there was a scary moment where he was on top of her and he said, "Are you really going to stand your ground on this?" She tried pushing him off again and he didn't move. Once again, she tried pushing him off and he didn't move. And he was just staring at her. And they just did this back and forth for a bit where she's kind of like trying to get out of the situation and he's not budging. So, she's kind of scared at this point, having to push back against a guy who's silently staring at her and not budging at all. And, she said no a bunch of times, but then she realized that she's going to have to make a decision and either fight back way more physically against this guy who's way bigger than her, and she's in his apartment, or she's just going to have to, the way she words it is, act like it's my own decision to gain some autonomy over the situation and just take it. And so they had sex. So, I mean, oh my God, that is just not a good situation at all. Like, the most charitable reading of that is extreme coercion, and the worst reading of it is just just straight up rape. So, not a good situation at all. I wanted to look here at these screenshots that she posts. Just got to find the right one here. Um, so up here, these are texts of just like them hanging out. They're going to go meet. They meet at this bar. And then the next morning, she texts, "Hey, so I've been thinking about last night and wanted to say, looking back, the sex felt super coercive and bad, especially after I felt like I set a boundary a few times. Well, I've already been in your mouth. What's the difference? Was wild to say. Sex is never great when it's something people are like, yeah, okay, I'll give in to. Sucks because I had a good time and thought you were cool before then. I want to believe you're a good person. These are just some things to think about for the future. Also, buy condoms." She also posts this picture that apparently is taken inside of Tilian's apartment. These are like his plaques and other posters and stuff from Dance Gavin Dance that she thought was cool. So she took a picture of it. So, really good evidence. Not like you need really good evidence at this point because, like I said, Tilian full on acknowledges that all of this happened. So this is his apology to her. Uh, I won't really read the whole thing. It's not super long, but he responds in this Reddit post and he says that her story really surprised him because in his mind, both of the times that they were intimate were consensual and that they were both okay with what was going on. He said, yeah, he was just confused about the whole thing, and after speaking to a friend, decided it was best not to reply. And that kind of seems like a strategy to cover it up and not acknowledge it back in the moment, which I guess was working pretty well until all of this other stuff came out and he was forced to acknowledge it. So before I get into the next part of this, I just want to point out that some fans were talking about this song called Honey Revenge, and this is one of the songs that Tilian sings. And looking at the lyrics now, it is kind of shocking to see them in this light. Like this part right here. "Oh, I'm just tying the knot. Can't wait to catch you all alone. Girl, then I swear I'll take you home, whether you want it or not, whether you like it or not," and repeats that. Talks about stuck inside the living room. "I can't monitor what I consume." It's kind of a reference to like alcohol, if you remember, like the Swanfest weekend, how much he was drinking for that. Uh, just whether you want it or not, whether you like it or not. So I know people don't take Dance Gavin Dance lyrics seriously. They're nonsense most of the time, but in this instance, it is kind of like a shocking new way to look at this song. Okay, so up next, Dance Gavin Dance released a statement, and I'm going to talk about this statement and the way that them and Tilian have handled this situation so far. So Dance Gavin Dance says, "The recent allegations against Tilian are something we take very seriously, and we've been in deep discussion regarding the appropriate action. Effective immediately, Tilian will be stepping away from the band in order to seek professional help. John, Will, Matt, and Andrew will continue on with all currently scheduled tours, proceeding with releasing their new album, Jackpot Juicer." And, they say they worked really hard on the album. They talk about Tim. They want to honor his legacy. They know it's an upsetting time. Just ask for people to be as understanding as possible while everyone works through this. So, the part I want to focus on first is where they say, "Effective immediately, Tilian will be stepping away from the band in order to seek professional help." That statement, it's unclear. It seems like they're leaving the option for Tilian to return to the band. Honestly, this is going to be a lose-lose situation no matter what they do here, because if he returns, people are going to be mad about that. If he doesn't return, the people who want him to come back are going to be mad about, him not returning as well. So no matter what, their fan base is going to be divided. In my opinion, the Tilian era is over. At least the previous Tilian era. If he does end up returning to the band, there's going to be a huge asterisk next to it. Fans are probably going to treat it the same way that they treat Tim Lambesis returning to As I Lay Dying, where it just taints it for some people, There's this dark mark against them. There's a shadow that'll always be hanging over their heads. And no matter what, the reason I think that this era is over is because this is a massive shift for the band after their longest period of stability ever. Remember, they had Johnny Craig on their first album, but he was insane. And then they had Kurt Travis for 2 albums, and then they went back to Johnny Craig for 1 album, and then they realized he was still insane. And then they found Tilian, and he has been their singer on the last 6 albums. So I don't want to get too far away from the facts here, but I do want to offer my opinion on how Dance Gavin Dance is handling this. In my opinion, DGD and Tilian's statement was really strategic. Okay, I don't want to try to give them credit for pulling the wool over everybody's eyes or anything like that, but it was really strategic. I think this is probably the best that I PR wise and strategically the best that I've seen a band handle a situation like that. And this is why. Tilian didn't deny anything. He didn't say that never happened. He just said that he thought it was consensual and that the women were okay with everything that happened. Now, if you read the women's statements and believe everything that they say, it's hard to imagine how Tilian could think that it was consensual because they both told him no multiple times. Like I said before, even with a super charitable reading of the situation, he had to know he was coercing them to have sex with him, at the very least. I don't think he set out to rape them or anything like that, but, if it was against their will and they really didn't want to, then, I'm not sure what else you want to call it. But the whole point here is that without clear evidence that he purposely raped them, he can fall back on, well, there must have been a miscommunication because I thought it was consensual. And then he can say, I need help understanding consent and boundaries because it was never my intent to hurt these women, and I don't want it to happen again. And that kind of shuts down further discussion on this topic because there's not much to speculate on anymore. He admits that it happened. He spins it in a different light, and he comes out the other end as a guy who's having a hard time dealing with the death of his friend and a guy that doesn't understand consent. And that's not nearly as bad as being labeled a rapist and being kicked out of the band. Okay, that's also way better than what A Day to Remember tried to do and just ignoring the allegations and having the fans constantly pester you about it. And I think that guy ended up leaving the band anyway, and it just left a really bad taste in everybody's mouth. So in this way, they address the situation right away, but they kind of spin it in a certain way where it doesn't seem as bad as it could, right? If he tried to say, that didn't happen, it'd have a lot harder of a time doing that. The reason I say it shuts down the conversation is because the only thing left for the fans to decide is how seriously they take the women's account, the women's accounts of those nights, and if they decide, whether Tilian actually thought everything was consensual or if he purposely ignored their rejections and coerced or raped them. So, looking at the band's future, they have a couple options. Facing the death of Tim and the allegations of Tilian, they could call it quits. That doesn't seem very likely, though, because they have a new album coming out soon and they've committed to their upcoming tours. One of them is with Coheed and Cambria, and I actually have tickets to that show, so that should be interesting. They could have Kurt Travis rejoin the band as their clean vocalist. And, like I said, Kurt was the vocalist on their second and third album. And hilariously, he has been liking tweets calling for Dance Gavin Dance to bring him back. So you could see we're on his profile in his likes, and you just scroll down a little bit. And it's like, Kurt Travis, can you save us? DGD, it's time for Kurt Travis to reclaim his spot as lead vocalist. Bring Kurt Travis back. There's a couple other ones like that, and I just think it's so funny that he is publicly liking those and kind of going along with it. The next option, I think this one's the most likely. Dance Gavin Dance could have Andrew Wells be their new singer, Andrew toured with Dance Gavin Dance from 2015 to 2021, and he officially joined the band at the end of 2021. He's the lead singer of another band called Idola, and he's a really talented vocalist. It's not like all of Dance Gavin Dance's singers have sounded the same. They've all sounded really different, actually, so it's not like they need to find somebody who sounds just like Tilian or anything like that. And I think Andrew would be a good fit for the band. Dance Gavin Dance could simply not replace Tilian and basically become Secret Band. And for those who don't know, Secret Band is essentially an all-screaming version of Dance Gavin Dance. It has 3 current members from Dance Gavin Dance. It has John, Will, and Matt, and then it has 2 former touring Dance Gavin Dance members. That option doesn't seem that likely, though. Lastly, they could have Johnny Craig rejoin the band and hope that the third time is the charm, but he is just as insane as he's ever been, so I think that's probably the least likely option of them all. Overall, though, I mean, this is a terrible situation. Dance Gavin Dance had skyrocketed in recent years with Tilian. He's my favorite singer that the band has had. I'm not sure if he's like technically the most talented or has the most range or anything like that, but I really like the band's style with him in it. I would not like to see that change. So I'm just not sure what they're going to do from here. It's a really tough situation. I'm really curious to see if the door is open for him to come back, how the fan base would react to that. I'm not sure if Dance Gavin Dance is going to get a clear picture of how that is going to pan out before they make the decision. And so that's going to be a really tough one for them. I think that's about all I have, though, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Hopefully, I could piece it together a little bit for you. I don't know. Hopefully, I won't have to make another one of these videos in a while because they're not fun to make. I think the main bottom line here is don't idolize people in bands, right? They're just normal people. They're not perfect. They make really bad mistakes. And, you just set yourself up for disappointment. And I think enough of these stories have come out by now where people should realize, I love their music, I love their art, I love whatever, but being attached to the person themselves, you're just setting yourself up to be disappointed because nobody's going to be perfect and some people do pretty bad stuff. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope to see you next time.